When illness strikes, we look to doctors to give us answers. But what if they can't? For these unlucky patients, diagnosis is a mystery.
Larry was born in the fall on September 27th, and he was your average, healthy little child. I loved him. He was amazing, and he always had a habit of making people laugh. He was a good kid.
Larry was 15 years old when he first began experiencing problems. Little did he know, these problems would be sticking with him for the rest of his life.
Around the summer of his freshman year in high school, I noticed something a bit odd. We were eating dinner one night, and I was watching him eat, and I couldn't help but notice that he had trouble eating. Like, at some point, he was really struggling to get the food in his spoon. And on top of that, he even dropped his spoon. It was like he lost control. It was weird. I was compelled to ask him if he was okay, but I thought it would be a little strange. So, I didn't think much of it. I figured it was probably just the stress from studying all the time on his, he had exams coming up, so naturally, I thought he was just tired.
Life for the family continued to be as normal as ever, but they were unaware that their whole world was about to be flipped upside down.
It was a Monday morning, and Larry was off to school. He said bye and left out the door. And, I was washing dishes, and moments after he walks outside, I hear this loud thump. So immediately, I rush over to see what's going on, and next thing I know, I see Larry on the floor. When I pick him up, there's this blood oozing from his chin.
Immediately, the worried mother drove to the hospital.
I rushed over to the hospital because, I had to get that bandaged, and so when we arrived, they cleaned it and wrapped it up, and then they dismissed it. But before I left, I had to ask them one question. I noticed that when I picked Larry up off the floor, that it didn't look like his hands were scraped at all. It seemed as if he fell right on his chin. And usually, people usually use their hands to stop them. But that wasn't the case. The doctor treated the whole thing as if it was nothing to worry about. He just said accidents happen. It doesn't necessarily mean anything.
The concerned mother was unsatisfied with the doctor's response, so she decided to take matters into her own hands.
I was feeling a tad uneasy due to the weird behavior coming from Larry. With the spoons, having trouble eating his food, and then falling right on his face. Lately, he just seems way more clumsier than usual. I decided to schedule an appointment for Larry to see if there was anything wrong.
After waiting several weeks, it was finally time for Larry to go to his appointment.
So when we went to the checkup, they asked basic questions and did normal tests. And when we got the results back from the doctor, he said they were a little strange. And that's when he referred us to the doctor, Tanya Rubin.
Ellen was eager to meet Dr. Rubin and to have Larry be examined. On the 16th of March, they drove to Rubin's office.
When I first saw Larry walk into the room, I noticed there was a few things wrong with him. His balance was a bit off, and I had my suspicions.
Dr. Rubottom questioned Larry and ordered for him to get a CAT scan as soon as possible.
When Dr. Rubottom wanted Larry to get one of those CAT scans, I was scared, but I knew that it would bring us a step closer to finding out what was wrong with Larry.
They returned home, somewhat feeling relieved, but once the results came in, they were in for a big surprise.
When I got home, I got a call from Dr. Rubottom almost immediately, and there was something telling me that this was definitely not going to be good. And I was right. When I was on the phone, she called me to tell me that I need to drive back there as soon as possible because the news was urgent.
The CT scan showed that Larry was slowly losing his use of the cerebellum because it was going through atrophy. That means that soon Larry would lose his voluntary muscle movements and eventually it would lead to death.
Spinocerebellar Ataxia Type 2 is one type of ataxia among a group of inherited diseases of the central nervous system. In SCA2, genetic defects lead to impairment of specific nerve fibers carrying messages to and from the brain, resulting in degeneration of the cerebellum.
Finding out that Larry had Spinocerebellar Ataxia Type 2 was probably one of the worst moments in my life. I was devastated to hear that Larry would never live a normal lifestyle ever again. I didn't know what to do.
There's currently no specific treatment to treat SCA2, but there is supportive therapy available to help manage symptoms, and there are resources to provide for emotional support.
Eventually, Larry and I were able to cope with this disease, and I promised myself that no matter what, I would try and help Larry have the best life he can have. Even though sometimes it's tough thinking about how bad things are gonna get, like soon he won't even be